A millionaire saw a girl crying by a trash bin. What he found inside left him in complete shock. The sharp click of Sarah Thompson's heels echoed through the rain-slicked alley as she ran, clutching a bundle tightly to her chest. Her blonde hair, now drenched and tangled, whipped around her face as she glanced over her shoulder. The footsteps behind her were getting closer. "You can't run forever," Sarah, a man's voice, boomed through the darkness. "Think about what you're doing." Sarah's heart pounded against her ribs as she ducked behind a dumpster, trying to muffle her ragged breathing. The bundle in her arms stirred slightly, and she pressed a trembling finger to tiny lips. "Shh, baby, please," she whispered, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. 2 blocks away, Elizabeth Morgan was leaving her office building. Another late night at the investment firm where she'd buried herself in work for the past 5 years. The sharp-suited CEO pulled her coat tighter against the bitter wind, her designer heels clicking purposefully on the wet pavement. That's when she heard it, a sound that would change her life, forever, a child's muffled sob. Elizabeth froze, memories she'd fought to suppress rushing back. The birth of her own daughter, the tragic accident, the funeral where she stood alone. She shook her head, trying to clear the thoughts, but the sobbing continued. Following the sound, she turned the corner and saw a young girl, no more than 7, standing by a dumpster. The child's face was streaked with tears as she pointed frantically at something inside. Elizabeth's world tilted on its axis as she peered into the dumpster. There, wrapped in what looked like an expensive cashmere sweater, was a newborn baby, still warm, still breathing. Beside the infant lay a gold locket and a handwritten note: "Please save them both. They'll kill us if they find us." As Elizabeth gathered the baby in her arms, police sirens wailed in the distance. The young girl grabbed Elizabeth's free hand, her eyes wide with terror. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them find us. The bad men in the big house. They hurt my mummy." In that moment, as Elizabeth held a stranger's baby and looked into the eyes of a terrified child, she felt something she thought had died years ago: purpose. She didn't know it yet, but this rain-soaked night would unravel a web of corruption that reached into the highest echelons of power and heal wounds she thought would never close. The polished glass walls of Morgan Investments reflected Elizabeth Morgan's outward success: CEO at 40, Forbes cover features, and a penthouse overlooking Central Park. But the reflection didn't show the cracks beneath the surface, the wounds that 5 years hadn't healed. Elizabeth's corner office told 2 stories. One wall displayed her achievements: Harvard MBA, financial awards, and philanthropic recognition. The other held a single photo, face down in an ornate silver frame. She hadn't looked at it in years, but she didn't need to. The image was burned into her memory: a 3-year-old girl with auburn curls, laughing on a carousel. Grace. Her daughter's name still caught in her throat. 5 years ago, Elizabeth had everything: a thriving career, a loving husband in Thomas Morgan, and their precious Grace. That spring morning started like any other, with Grace chattering about her preschool friends while Thomas drove her to school. Elizabeth had been on a conference call when she got the news: a drunk driver, a red light, an impact that shattered more than just metal and glass. Grace died instantly. Thomas survived for 3 days in the ICU, never regaining consciousness, leaving Elizabeth alone with the beeping machines and endless silence. When he finally slipped away, Elizabeth was left with nothing but the echoing emptiness of their dream house and the weight of all their shared tomorrows that would never come. The investigation revealed a bitter truth: the drunk driver was William Foster, son of her firm's biggest client. The Foster family's influence ran deep, and despite clear evidence, William received only a suspended sentence. Justice, like everything else in Elizabeth's world, proved to be for sale. She threw herself into work, transforming grief into ruthless ambition. Under her leadership, Morgan Investments tripled its portfolio. She became known as the Ice Queen of Wall Street: brilliant, untouchable, and completely alone. The young associates whispered about her, wondering what made their CEO so coldly perfect, never knowing that perfection was just her armor against breaking. The night terrors still came, though less frequently now. Dreams of carousel music turning discordant, of Grace calling for help while Elizabeth remained frozen, unable to reach her. She'd wake gasping, her penthouse too large, too quiet, the city lights below offering no comfort. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, her therapist, suggested volunteering with children's charities, a way to honor Grace's memory. Elizabeth always refused. "I'm not ready," she'd say, but the truth was deeper. She didn't believe she deserved healing. The guilt of surviving, of being on that conference call instead of in the car with her family, had become a familiar companion. The only person who glimpsed behind her walls was her assistant, Rebecca Mitchell, who'd been with her since before the accident. Rebecca quietly maintained the office's unspoken rules: no children's photos on desks, no discussion of family events, and absolutely no carousel music in the building's elevator system. Elizabeth had crafted her new life with surgical precision, excising anything that might trigger memories of her loss. She dated occasionally powerful men who understood the language of mergers and acquisitions, but never let anyone close enough to see the broken pieces she carried. Her world was ordered, controlled, and safely numb until the night she heard a child crying by a dumpster, and everything she'd built began to crumble. As she stared out her office window at the Manhattan skyline, Elizabeth couldn't have known that the carefully constructed walls of her life were about to be shattered, not by another tragedy, but by another expected chance at redemption. The gold locket found with the abandoned baby would lead her down a path that would force her to confront not only her past, but a web of corruption that made her own tragedy part of a much larger, darker pattern. Dr. James Wilson's reputation at St. Mary's Hospital preceded him. Chief of pediatric medicine at 38, his colleagues admired his surgical brilliance while whispering about his obsession with cases involving abandoned children. Few knew that his dedication stemmed from his own past, a history he shared with Elizabeth Morgan, though neither had realized it yet. His office walls were lined with photos of children he'd saved, but one frame held a yellowed newspaper clipping from 25 years ago. Hospital fire claims lives. Children missing. He'd survived that fire at St. Christopher's orphanage, but the guilt of being the only survivor haunted his every success. Detective Anna Hayes of the Special Victims Unit carried herself with the weight of too many unsolved cases. At 45, her dark hair was streaked with premature grey, earned from 15 years of witnessing humanity's darkest moments. She'd been investigating a pattern of missing children and suspicious adoptions for months, all somehow connected to St. Mary's Hospital, but each lead disappeared into a maze of sealed records and political pressure. Rebecca Mitchell, Elizabeth's assistant for 7 years, knew more than she revealed. Behind her efficient exterior and perfect meeting minutes, she maintained a private database of similar cases across the state. Her own sister had disappeared 15 years ago, leaving behind only a tearful voicemail about powerful men and terrible mistakes. The police had dismissed it as a runaway case, but Rebecca knew better. William Cooper, the hospital's board chairman, moved through the city's highest social circles with easy charm and generous political donations. His public face was that of a philanthropist, but in private meetings his smile never quite reached his eyes. He'd risen from nowhere 20 years ago, his past carefully hidden behind expensive lawyers and sealed records. District Attorney Michael Reynolds built his career on being incorruptible, but lately the pressure to look away from certain cases had become intense. His daughter's recent acceptance to an elite private school came with an anonymous scholarship, and he understood the unspoken message. Still, when he looked at the photos of missing children on Detective Hayes's wall, he felt the ground shifting beneath his moral certainty. Sarah Thompson, whose desperate flight would trigger the unraveling of everything, had once been Sarah Foster, a name she'd been forced to abandon. The daughter of a prominent family, she'd disappeared from college 5 years ago. Everyone assumed she'd run away to Europe, never knowing she'd been trapped in a golden cage of threats and manipulation, watching as others like her disappeared into a system designed to silence them. These lives orbited each other like planets around a dark star, each carrying pieces of a truth too terrible to face alone. Dr. Wilson saw the pattern in mysterious injuries that didn't match parents' stories. Detective Hayes found it in missing person reports that were mysteriously closed. Rebecca tracked it through financial records that never quite added up. They all moved through the same city, past each other in hospital corridors and charity galas, never realizing they were connected by invisible threads of tragedy and hope. But on the night Elizabeth Morgan found 2 abandoned children, these threads would begin to tangle and pull tight, drawing them all toward a confrontation that would either expose the darkness or consume them all. The stage was set, the players in position, each carrying their own wounds and secrets. None of them could have predicted how their lives would intertwine, or how their individual quests for truth would merge into something larger than themselves. Sarah Thompson's life had been divided into 2 distinct chapters before, and after the gala at the governor's mansion 5 years ago. Before, she had been Sarah Foster, the cherished daughter of real estate mogul Richard Foster, a straight-A student at Columbia University with dreams of becoming a human rights lawyer. After, she became a ghost, a number in a system designed to swallow young women whole. That fateful night, wearing a blue silk dress her mother had chosen, Sarah overheard a conversation in the mansion's library that would destroy her privileged world. Congressman Robert Williams and William Cooper, discussing what they called the cleanup. Names of girls, dates, locations, and staggering amounts of money. When she recognized her best friend Ashley's name among them, Ashley, who had supposedly died in a boating accident 3 months earlier, Sarah's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering the facade of their secrecy. The next 24 hours became a blur of threats, tears, and carefully worded suggestions about her family's safety. Her father, rather than protecting her, made a single phone call and turned away, his ambitions worth more than his daughter's life. By sunrise, Sarah Foster ceased to exist, replaced by Sarah Thompson, a troubled young woman receiving treatment at a private facility. For 2 years, they kept her in a luxurious prison disguised as a women's wellness center. Other girls came and went, their pregnancies handled with discreet efficiency, their babies disappearing into a network of approved adoptions. Sarah watched, documented, and waited, knowing that speaking out meant risking not only her life but the lives of those she loved. She learned the system from the inside, how the girls were chosen, how accidents were arranged, how wealthy families paid fortunes for babies with the right genetic backgrounds. The network reached into every corner of power: judges who signed papers without questions, doctors who falsified records, politicians who buried investigations. Sarah's own pregnancy wasn't planned by the network. Her relationship with David, a young orderly who showed her kindness, had been her one source of comfort. When they discovered her condition, David disappeared, another accident that wasn't an accident at all. The network saw it as an opportunity, a chance to prove her loyalty by giving up her own child. Instead, Sarah planned her escape with the patience of someone who had nothing left to lose. She memorized guard rotations, collected small amounts of cash, and waited until she was carrying not just her own child but evidence of the entire operation: documents, photos, and names carefully gathered over years. 7 months pregnant, hiding in a series of safe houses arranged through an underground network of domestic violence shelters, Sarah met Emily. The 7-year-old was another victim of the system. Her mother vanished after threatening to expose a prominent judge. In Emily's innocent face, Sarah saw a chance at redemption, a possibility of saving at least one more person besides her unborn child. But the network's reach proved longer than she imagined. Each safe house became compromised, each ally disappeared or went silent. On that rainy night by the dumpster, Sarah made the hardest choice of her life, trusting a stranger with not only her newborn daughter, but also Emily, along with the evidence that could bring down the entire operation. What Sarah couldn't have known was that Elizabeth Morgan, the stranger who found her children, had her own score to settle with the network, though neither woman yet realized how their paths had already crossed years before. The gold locket Sarah left with her baby contained not just a mother's love but a key to unraveling everything if they could live long enough to use it. The night Elizabeth Morgan found the children changed everything in a heartbeat. Standing there in the rain, cradling a newborn while a terrified 7-year-old clung to her designer coat, she felt time itself bifurcate into before and after. "My name's Emily," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain. "The baby is Emma. Please don't call the police. The bad men have police friends." Her words carried a wisdom no child should possess. Elizabeth pulled off her cashmere coat, carefully wrapping it around Emily's shivering shoulders. The baby, Emma, stirred in her arms, impossibly small and vulnerable. The gold locket around the infant's neck gleamed dully in the streetlight, its weight somehow significant against Elizabeth's palm. "I have an apartment nearby," Elizabeth heard herself saying, the words emerging before she could analyze their implications. "Let's get you both warm and dry. Then we can figure this out." Emily's grip on her hand tightened, trust and terror intertwined. The walk to Elizabeth's penthouse was surreal. The doorman's carefully neutral expression spoke volumes about the sight they must have presented the notorious Ice Queen of Wall Street, disheveled and rain-soaked, carrying a newborn while leading a bedraggled child. "Mrs. Morgan," he said simply, holding the door. "Shall I call anyone?" "No, James. Not tonight." The unspoken understanding in his nod was worth more than words. But in the elevator, Emily's reflection in the polished doors showed a girl holding herself too straight, too still, the posture of someone used to making herself invisible. Elizabeth recognized it from her own childhood photos after Grace's death. The penthouse door opened to darkness and silence, a space designed for solitude now suddenly inhabited by the quiet breathing of 3 people instead of 1. Elizabeth hit the lights, and Emily gasped. The Manhattan skyline spread before them, a glittering carpet of lights that made the girl momentarily forget her fear. "Are you hungry?" Elizabeth asked, leading them to the kitchen. Emily nodded, then looked guilty about admitting need. When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning," Emily whispered. "We had to keep running." Elizabeth's heart clenched. She opened her Sub-Zero refrigerator, its contents a testament to her solitary life. Takeout containers, a bottle of expensive champagne, wilting arugula. "How about grilled cheese?" she offered, remembering how Grace had loved them. While Emily ate, Elizabeth prepared a makeshift bed on the couch, her mind racing. The baby would need formula, diapers, proper clothes. Emily needed everything, and they both needed protection from whatever had driven their mother to such desperate measures. "The locket," Emily said suddenly, looking up from her sandwich. "Mummy said it's important, that it proves everything." Elizabeth carefully opened the gold pendant. Inside was not a photo but a tiny microsed card, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. Whatever was on that card had been worth abandoning 2 children to protect. The baby's cry pierced the night, primal and demanding. Elizabeth lifted Emma, muscle memory from Grace taking over as she cradled the infant. "Shh, little one," she murmured, swaying gently. "You're safe now." But were they? The note's warning echoed in her mind. "They'll kill us if they find us." Who were they? What kind of danger could drive a mother to leave her newborn in a dumpster? Emily had fallen asleep on the couch, the remains of her sandwich still clutched in one hand. In sleep, her face finally matched her age, young, vulnerable, bearing shadows no child should carry. Elizabeth covered her with a cashmere throw, then moved to the window, Emma still in her arms. The city spread below them, its lights now seeming less like stars and more like watching eyes. Somewhere out there, Mother was either running for her life or already silenced. Somewhere, the bad men Emily feared were realizing their quarry had slipped away. Elizabeth Morgan, who had spent 5 years building walls around her heart, felt those barriers crumbling. These children needed more than just shelter, they needed a protector. The kind of protector she had failed to be for Grace. Her phone buzzed Rebecca, her assistant. "Mrs. Morgan, Dr. Wilson from St. Mary's has been trying to reach you. There's been an incident at the hospital. A woman was found unconscious in the parking garage. She was carrying photos of 2 children." Elizabeth's grip tightened on Emma. The game was already in motion, and she had just unwittingly become a player. "Rebecca," she said quietly, "I need you to do something for me. And it can never leave this conversation." St. Mary's Hospital gleamed in the pre-dawn light, its modern facade masking age-old secrets. Elizabeth arrived with Emma and Emily, her heart pounding against her Chanel suit. Rebecca had arranged a private entrance through the service area, away from curious eyes. But Dr. James Wilson met them in an isolated examination room, his face grave. "Mrs. Morgan," he said, then stopped short at the sight of the children. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps, or fear. "You found them." "What do you know about this, Dr. Wilson?" Elizabeth kept her voice low, conscious of Emily's tight grip on her hand. The girl had refused to leave her side, even for a moment. "The woman in the parking garage," he said, closing the door carefully. "She was carrying photos of these children. Before she lost consciousness, she said one word, Cooper. Then her heart stopped. We managed to revive her, but she's in a coma." Elizabeth felt a chill. William Cooper, the hospital board chairman, whose name appeared on half the city's charitable foundations. Was she identified? No ID, no phone, nothing except the photos, and this he held up a keycard. Access to the hospital's restricted records floor. Only senior staff have these. Emma stirred in Elizabeth's arms as Dr. Wilson examined her. His gentle competence with the baby spoke of years of experience, but there was something else, a personal investment that went beyond professional duty. "The baby's healthy," he confirmed, "but there are traces of drugs in her system, high-end sedatives, the kind used in private clinics." His jaw tightened. "I've seen this pattern before." "What pattern?" Elizabeth demanded. "Pregnant women disappearing. Babies adopted through exclusive agencies. Records that vanish when I try to investigate." He met her eyes. 4 cases in the past year, all connected to this hospital. A nurse knocked, entering with supplies for Emma. Elizabeth noticed how Dr. Wilson subtly positioned himself between the door and the children. The nurse's name tag read Linda, but her hands shook as she set down the supplies, and she avoided eye contact. "Linda," Dr. Wilson called softly as she turned to leave. "How's Mr. Cooper's special ward today?" The nurse froze. I don't work that floor, Doctor." She practically fled the room. "Special ward?" Elizabeth asked. "Officially, it's a private rehabilitation facility." Unofficially, he shook his head. "Nobody who goes in ever seems to come out through the front door." Emily suddenly spoke, her first words since arriving at the hospital. "The white room," she whispered. "Mummy was there, with the other ladies who cried." Elizabeth and Dr. Wilson exchanged looks. A 7-year-old's testimony wouldn't hold up in court, but it confirmed their suspicions. "I need to see those records," Elizabeth said. "It's not that simple. The restricted floor requires 2 key cards to access and the security cameras." "I own shares in this hospital, Doctor. Significant shares." Elizabeth's voice carried the steel that had earned her Wall Street reputation. "And I have friends in the SEC who would be very interested in certain financial discrepancies I'd noticed." Dr. Wilson studied her for a long moment. "Tonight," he said finally, "after the evening shift change. But the children can't stay here, it's not safe." As if to prove his point, voices echoed from the hallway. "Cooper's on his way down. Some emergency board meeting about a security breach." Elizabeth gathered Emma closer. "My penthouse has security. Rebecca can watch them." "No," Dr. Wilson countered. "Too obvious." I have a better place, he scribbled an address. My mother's house in Greenwich. Nobody knows about it. She'll protect them with her life. The choice hung in the air: trust this doctor she barely knew, or risk the children's safety. Emily made the decision for her, reaching for the paper. The doctor has kind eyes, she said simply. Like Mummy. Before they could move, the door handle turned. Dr. Wilson reacted instantly, pulling a privacy curtain around them as William Cooper's voice filled the room. Wilson? There you are. We need to discuss some missing records. Of course, Mr. Cooper. Let me finish with my patient. Through a gap in the curtain, Elizabeth saw Cooper clearly for the first time. Expensive suit, perfect smile, cold eyes. He scanned the room slowly, predatory. Anything unusual today, Doctor? Any? Unexpected admissions? Just routine cases, Wilson replied smoothly. Behind the curtain, Elizabeth held her breath, one hand over Emma's tiny mouth. Cooper lingered a moment longer, then left. The click of his shoes echoed like gunshots down the hall. Tonight, Dr. Wilson whispered urgently. 10 p.m. Don't trust anyone else in this hospital. As Elizabeth slipped out with the children, she caught a glimpse of Cooper watching from his office window above. The game was escalating, and she had just committed to playing for the highest stakes imaginable: 2 young lives and the chance to expose a darkness she was only beginning to comprehend. Elizabeth's penthouse felt like a war room as Detective Anna Hayes spread documents across the marble dining table. Legally, we can place them in protective custody, the detective explained, but that makes a paper trail. One that certain people will be watching for. Elizabeth stood by the window, watching Emily sleep on the couch while cradling Emma. The city lights blurred through unshed tears as memories of Grace flooded back. What about temporary private custody? She asked. I have the resources, the security? Detective Hayes' expression softened. It's not that simple. 2 children with no documentation, possibly connected to a major criminal investigation. The system. The system is broken, Elizabeth cut in. You know it. I know it. That's why their mother left them with a stranger instead of going to the police. Rebecca entered silently, carrying a stack of legal papers. Always efficient, she'd already contacted Elizabeth's lawyers, drafted emergency custody documents, and prepared multiple contingency plans. But there's another option, Rebecca said quietly. Private adoption agencies sometimes handle sensitive cases. No questions asked. For the right price, she placed a business card on the table. Sunshine Adoptions. They have interesting connections. Detective Hayes picked up the card, her face darkening. We've investigated them before. Every lead disappeared. Every witness changed their story. Then that's our way in, Elizabeth said. I'm a wealthy single woman seeking to adopt. Exactly their type of client. It's dangerous, Hayes warned. These people, they don't play by any rules. Elizabeth looked down at Emma's sleeping face, so trusting, so vulnerable. Then at Emily, who even in sleep kept one hand curled around the gold locket's chain. Neither do I. Not anymore. The next hours became a blur of activity. Rebecca coordinated with Elizabeth's legal team while Hayes made calls to trusted colleagues. By morning, they had created a paper trail that would withstand scrutiny. Elizabeth Morgan, seeking to adopt, had been privately approached about 2 children needing immediate placement. All technically legal, though walking a fine line. Dr. Wilson arrived as they finished, looking exhausted. Cooper's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. They're reviewing all adoption referrals from the past 5 years. He knows something's wrong. Then we're running out of time, Elizabeth said. She handed him a document. I need you to sign this. Medical certification for emergency custody placement. He read it carefully, understanding the risk she was taking. You know what this means? Once you sign these papers, you're all in. They'll come after you with everything they have. Elizabeth thought of Grace, of all the moments she'd missed, all the protection she'd failed to provide. "I lost my daughter because I wasn't there to protect her," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "I won't fail these children too." The morning sun was rising as they finalized the arrangements. Detective Hayes would officially list the case as under investigation but mark it low priority. Dr. Wilson would handle the medical records, creating a plausible history that could withstand examination. Rebecca would manage the practical details of suddenly acquiring 2 children. Emily woke as they finished, her eyes immediately seeking Elizabeth. "Are we leaving?" she asked, fear edging her voice. Elizabeth knelt beside her. "No, sweetheart. You're staying right here." With me, she hesitated, then continued, "if that's what you want." Emily's response was to throw her arms around Elizabeth's neck, holding on, as if afraid she'd disappear. Over the girl's shoulder, Elizabeth met Hayes' concerned gaze. They all knew this decision had just made her a target. "Mrs. Morgan," Rebecca interrupted gently. "The papers are ready." Elizabeth signed her name with the same pen she'd used to sign billion-dollar deals, but this felt heavier, more consequential. Each stroke of the pen was a commitment, a promise to 2 children she barely knew but already loved. "It's done," she said, just as Emma began to cry. As she moved to comfort the baby, Elizabeth caught her reflection in the window. The infamous Ice Queen of Wall Street was gone, replaced by someone both softer and stronger. Someone ready to fight a war she never expected to wage. "We'll need to move quickly now," Hayes said, gathering her files. "Cooper's people will be watching. One wrong move." "Let them watch," Elizabeth replied, steel in her voice. "I've spent 5 years building walls around my heart. Now I'm going to use those walls to protect these children. And God help anyone who tries to harm them." The microSD card from the locket lay on Elizabeth's desk like a tiny bomb waiting to detonate. Her private office's security system had been upgraded twice since the children arrived, but she still felt exposed as she inserted the card into her computer. Incoming call from Congressman Williams' office. Rebecca's voice crackled through the intercom. "3rd time this morning." "Keep stalling," Elizabeth replied, her fingers moving across the keyboard. The card's contents were encrypted, but her tech team had finally cracked it. As files populated her screen, her blood ran cold. Of financial records, hospital documents, photos, all leading to one name: Sarah Foster, the missing daughter of real estate mogul Richard Foster. The same Sarah Foster who had vanished from a charity gala 5 years ago, allegedly running away to Europe. The same gala where Congressman Robert Williams had announced his family values campaign. A knock at her door made her jump. Dr. Wilson entered, looking grave. "The woman from the parking garage," he said without preamble. "She's awake." Elizabeth locked her computer. "Take me to her." The private room at St. Mary's was guarded by 2 officers Hayes trusted. The woman in the bed looked nothing like her society photos from 5 years ago, but Elizabeth recognized Sarah Foster immediately. Emily had her eyes. "You have them." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "My children." "They're safe," Elizabeth assured her, taking her hand. "Emily and Emma are protected." Tears slid down Sarah's face. "Williams, he'll never stop." "The network. It's bigger than you know." She fumbled weakly with something under her pillow. "There's more. Evidence, storage unit, keys in my shoe." Dr. Wilson checked the monitors as Sarah's voice grew weaker. "She needs rest." "Wait." Sarah grabbed Elizabeth's arm with surprising strength. "The gala. 5 years ago, I saw. I heard them planning. Williams and Cooper. They choose girls who won't be missed. Rich families who'll pay to avoid scandal. Poor ones who can't fight back." Her voice broke. "Ashley Madison. She wasn't the first. But I have proof now. Everything's documented." Elizabeth's mind raced. Ashley Madison, the senator's daughter who died in a boating accident. She'd been Grace's age. Sarah will protect you. You can testify. No, Sarah's heart monitor spiked. Can't know I'm alive. Emily, she saw too much. They'll kill her first. Then Emma, she pressed a key into Elizabeth's hand. Unit 247. Riverside Storage. Everything you need to end this. Her eyes drifted to Dr. Wilson. Trust him. He was there. At St. Christopher's, he knows. Dr. Wilson stiffened. St. Christopher's Orphanage, the fire 25 years ago. Sarah nodded weakly. Cooper's first cover-up. The missing children weren't all victims. Some were. Merchandise. The monitors began beeping urgently. Dr. Wilson moved quickly, checking Sarah's vitals. She's crashing. Get a crash cart in here. Elizabeth was ushered out as medical staff rushed in. Through the window, she watched them fighting to stabilize Sarah. Her phone buzzed Detective Hayes. "We have a problem," Hayes said without greeting. "Someone just accessed Foster's sealed records. Williams is on the move. And Elizabeth, he's heading to your office." "Stall him," Elizabeth ordered, already moving. "I need 10 minutes. There's more." Cooper just called an emergency board meeting at the hospital. Topic: reviewing all recent emergency custody placements. Elizabeth's grip tightened on Sarah's key. Everything was accelerating. The storage unit would have to wait. Right now, she needed to get back to her office before Williams arrived, needed to protect the evidence they already had. Her phone buzzed again. "Rebecca, Mrs. Morgan, Emily's school just called. A man claiming to be her uncle tried to pick her up. Showed official documentation." Elizabeth's world tilted. "Is she safe?" "Yes. Your security team intercepted. But, Mrs. Morgan, the documentation was real. Signed by a family court judge this morning." The pieces clicked together. While they'd been focused on Williams, Cooper had been moving through legal channels. They were trying to take Emily through the system itself. "Get me Judge Harrison on the phone," Elizabeth commanded, her heels clicking rapidly across the hospital floor. "And, Rebecca, activate Protocol Grace." Protocol Grace, named for her daughter, was their nuclear option. Every piece of evidence they had would automatically be sent to 20 different news outlets if Elizabeth didn't enter a code every hour. She'd created it as insurance, hoping never to use it. The elevator opened to William Cooper himself. His smile was practiced, perfect. "Mrs. Morgan, just the person I wanted to see." Behind him, through the hospital windows, Elizabeth saw a black SUV pull up. Congressman Williams stepped out, flanked by men who were obviously not congressional aides. The game was changing. No more shadows and secrets. They were coming into the light, confident in their power to crush anyone in their way. Elizabeth straightened her spine, channeling every bit of the Ice Queen they'd nicknamed her. "Mr. Cooper, Congressman Williams, shall we discuss what this is really about?" Storage Unit 247 was tucked away in a forgotten corner of Riverside Storage, far from the security cameras. Elizabeth's hands shook as she turned Sarah's key in the lock. Dr. Wilson stood guard while Detective Hayes waited in her unmarked car outside. "My God," Dr. Wilson breathed as the door rolled up. The unit was a meticulous archive of horror. Filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled by year. On a table sat a laptop and stacks of external hard drives. Elizabeth opened the first cabinet. Inside were hundreds of files, each containing a girl's photo, medical records, and transaction details. "These go back 15 years, she whispered, pulling out a file at random. "Look at this, payments routed through Cooper's charitable foundation." Dr. Wilson picked up a medical file, his face ashen. "These are forged hospital records. Deaths that never happened, births that were covered up. Cooper's signature is on everyone." A familiar name caught Elizabeth's eye. "Ashley Madison." She opened the file with trembling fingers. Inside was a USB drive labeled Gala Night. "We need to get all of this out of here," Hayes said, appearing at the doorway. Now, Cooper's car was spotted heading this way. They worked quickly, loading boxes into Hayes' car. Elizabeth grabbed the laptop and hard drives last, just as headlights swept the storage facility's entrance. "Too late," Hayes muttered. "He's here. Back exit now." They slipped out through the facility's service entrance as Cooper's voice echoed through the corridors. "Search every unit. Find those files." Safe in Hayes' apartment, they began piecing together the network's operation. The laptop contained meticulous records. Cooper had documented everything, confident in his power to prevent exposure. "It's all here," Elizabeth said, scrolling through spreadsheets. "Girls selected from Williams' youth programs, wealthy families blackmailed into giving up their daughters, fake adoptions, real babies sold to the highest bidders." Hayes studied a document. Cooper ran it like a business. "Look at these profit margins. Each girl was assessed for market value based on background, appearance, education." Dr. Wilson's voice shook with rage. The hospital was their processing center. Private wings where girls were held until they gave birth. Medical records altered to show stillbirths while the babies were sold. Elizabeth opened another file and froze. "James, look at this. St. Christopher's Orphanage. The fire wasn't an accident." Dr. Wilson leaned in, his face pale. "Cooper was the administrator before the fire. These children, they were being sold. The fire was set to destroy records when investigators got too close." But why keep documenting everything, Hayes wondered. Why risk maintaining these records? Insurance, Elizabeth realized. Leverage over everyone involved. Judges, doctors, politicians, they're all implicated. That's how he's controlled them all these years. A video file caught her attention. Williams-Foster negotiation. The timestamp matched the night of the gala. Elizabeth clicked play. Sarah's voice filled the room. "You can't keep doing this." "I'll tell everyone." William's smooth reply, "Who would believe you? Your own father agreed to our terms." Cooper's cold laugh, "Another troublesome girl handled." "The program works, Robert." Elizabeth stopped the video, her hands shaking. "We have them, all of them." Hayes shook her head. "They'll claim it's all fabricated. These men have teams of lawyers, political connections." "Then we'll need something they can't fight." Elizabeth pulled out her phone. "Rebecca? Remember that list of journalists we trusted? Call them all. Now." Dr. Wilson touched her arm. "Elizabeth, if we do this, there's no going back. These men will come at you with everything they have." Elizabeth thought of Emily and Emma, safe in her penthouse under armed guard, of Sarah, fighting for life in the hospital, of Grace, who she couldn't save. "Could," she said firmly, "let them come. I'm done playing defense." Her phone buzzed a text from Rebecca. "Mrs. Morgan, Cooper just called. He's offering a deal. Full custody of the girls, all charges dropped if you hand over the files." Elizabeth's laugh was cold. "Tell him I don't make deals with monsters." She turned to Hayes and Wilson. "We're going public. Tonight, every news outlet, every social media platform. Let's see how their power holds up under the spotlight." Hayes nodded grimly. "I'll coordinate with FBI contacts. Once this breaks, they can't stall anymore." And Elizabeth, Dr. Wilson added softly, "You've just declared war on some very powerful people." Elizabeth thought of the files, each one representing a life destroyed by greed and corruption. "No," she corrected. "They declared war when they started hurting children. I'm just finally fighting back." The early morning light filtered through Elizabeth's office windows as Dr. Wilson paced, his usual composure shattered. Before him lay a file from St. Christopher's Orphanage, yellowed with age but devastating in its contents. "I always knew I wasn't the only survivor," he said, his voice raw. But this he touched a photo of himself at age 7, standing beside a young girl. Her name was Amy. She was like a sister to me. Elizabeth studied the image. What happened to her? The night of the fire, Cooper separated us. Said she was being adopted by a special family. I never saw her again. His hands trembled. Until now. He placed another photo on the desk, a recent one. A woman in surgical scrubs at St. Mary's. Meet Dr. Amy Parker, head of obstetrics. Cooper's most trusted doctor. "You're Amy," Elizabeth whispered. "She's been working with them." Not willingly, Wilson pulled out more documents. Cooper's been blackmailing her. She signed off on all those falsified birth records because he threatened to reveal her past she doesn't even remember. Hayes entered, carrying coffee. "The fire didn't just destroy records," she said. "It traumatized the children so severely that many blocked out their memories. Cooper used that trauma, shaped their new identities." I recognized her voice first, Wilson continued. "In surgery, she was humming a lullaby, the same one she used to sing to help me sleep at the orphanage. When I tried to talk to her about it, Cooper had me transferred to a different department." Elizabeth's phone buzzed. "A message from Rebecca, Dr. Parker requesting urgent meeting. Says it's about Project Cherub." Wilson's head snapped up. That was Cooper's code name for the original program at St. Christopher's. Amy remembers. Or it's a trap, Hayes warned. "No," Wilson said firmly. "I know my sister. She's breaking free." The meeting was arranged in Elizabeth's private conference room. Amy Parker entered looking haunted but determined. "James," she said softly, "I remember now. The fire, the children, all of it." Tears streamed down Wilson's face as he embraced her. "I tried to find you." "Cooper made sure we never connected," Amy said, pulling away. "But seeing those children you're protecting, Emily and Emma, it triggered something. The memories started coming back." She placed a USB drive on the table. "I've been collecting evidence for years, not knowing why. Birth records, adoption papers, video footage from the maternity ward. I thought I was just being thorough. But I was building a case, wasn't I? Some part of me knew." Hayes picked up the drive. "This could be the missing piece we need. Medical proof of what they've been doing." "There's more," Amy continued. "Cooper didn't just separate us that night. He's been replicating the program. Finding broken children, reshaping them into unwitting accomplices. There are others like me in hospitals across the country." Wilson sank into a chair. "How many?" "Dozens. All survivors of accidents at various institutions. All placed in medical positions where they could facilitate the network." Amy's voice broke. "I helped them, James. I didn't know, but I helped them do to others what they did to us." Elizabeth touched her shoulder. "You were a victim, Amy. But now you can help us stop them." "Cooper will kill me if he finds out I've talked." "No," Wilson said fiercely. "I lost you once. Never again." Elizabeth's security system pinged. Cooper was in the building lobby. Amy paled. "He knows. Somehow he knows. Somehow he knows." "Good," Elizabeth said, her voice steel. "Let him come." "Detective Hayes, get Amy's evidence to your FBI contacts. Dr. Wilson, take your sister to the safe house. It's time to end this." As Wilson led Amy out through the private exit, she stopped. "Elizabeth, there's one more thing you should know. The night of the fire, I saw Cooper talking to someone. A boy, maybe 15. He called him little brother." Elizabeth's world tilted. The pieces suddenly aligned. Cooper's meteoric rise from nowhere, his obsession with controlling others, the way he'd positioned himself at the heart of the city's power structure. "William Cooper isn't his real name, is it?" she asked softly. Amy shook her head. "No, he was one of us. An orphan who learned to survive by becoming the very monster who destroyed him." The elevator chimed. Elizabeth straightened her spine, ready to face the man who had twisted so many lives, including his own. "Go," she told Wilson and Amy. "Let me deal with Cooper. It's time he faced someone who understands what it means to lose everything and rise stronger." Dawn broke over Elizabeth's penthouse, painting the sky in shades of hope. Emily sat at the breakfast bar, carefully feeding Emma her bottle, while Elizabeth prepared pancakes, Grace's favorite breakfast. The domesticity of the scene still felt surreal. "You're doing that perfectly," Elizabeth praised, watching Emily's gentle handling of her baby sister. The girl beamed, a rare smile that transformed her solemn face. "Mummy taught me," Emily said softly, then hesitated. "I mean, Sarah. Is it okay that I still call her Mummy?" Elizabeth set down her spatula and moved to embrace Emily. "Of course it is, sweetheart. Sarah is your mother, and she loves you very much. We're just keeping you safe until she's better." At the hospital, Sarah was recovering slowly. Each visit brought more color to her cheeks, more strength to her voice. Today, as Elizabeth entered with Emma in her arms and Emily clutching her hand, Sarah's eyes filled with tears of joy. "My babies," she whispered, reaching out. Emily rushed forward, but stopped short, suddenly uncertain. The distance of their separation hung between them like a physical thing. "It's okay," Elizabeth encouraged gently. She helped Sarah hold Emma, watching as mother and daughter reconnected. Emily edged closer, finally allowing Sarah to pull her into an embrace. "I'm so sorry," Sarah murmured into Emily's hair. "I never wanted to leave you. Either of you." "I know," Emily replied, wise beyond her years. "The bad men made you. But Elizabeth protected us. She makes pancakes like you used to." Sarah's eyes met Elizabeth's over their daughters' heads. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. Elizabeth nodded, her own eyes misting. She understood now motherhood wasn't about biology or legal documents. It was about love, protection, and the fierce determination to shield these precious lives from harm. The days fell into a rhythm. Mornings were for breakfast and school preparations, Emily gradually relaxing into the routine of normal childhood. Afternoons brought hospital visits where Sarah grew stronger and the bonds between all of them deepened. Evenings were for stories, baths, and the quiet moments that knit their unlikely family together. One night, Elizabeth found Emily in Grace's old room, now converted into a nursery for Emma. The girl was showing her baby sister a drawing, a family portrait with 3 mothers and 2 daughters. "Is this okay?" Emily asked anxiously, showing Elizabeth the picture. "I drew all of us together." Elizabeth's heart swelled. "It's perfect," she answered, remembering how she'd once thought her capacity for maternal love had died with Grace. How wrong she'd been. Sarah's recovery brought new challenges and deeper connections. When she was strong enough to be moved, Elizabeth arranged for her transfer to the penthouse's secure guest suite. The first night together was awkward, all of them navigating unfamiliar territory. "I don't want to impose," Sarah began, but Elizabeth cut her off. "This isn't charity," she said firmly. "This is family. Different, maybe, but no less real." Over late-night tea, after the girls were asleep, Sarah and Elizabeth shared their stories. Sarah spoke of her privileged childhood shattered by betrayal, of her fear and loneliness during her years in hiding. Elizabeth revealed her own losses, Grace, Thomas, her faith in justice. "How do you do it?" Sarah asked one evening, watching Elizabeth soothe Emma through a bout of colic. "After losing Grace, how do you open your heart again?" Elizabeth considered the question, gently patting Emma's back. "I thought I was protecting myself by staying closed off, but seeing Emily that night, finding Emma, I realized Grace wouldn't want her death to stop me from loving. She'd want me to help other children, to be the protector I couldn't be for her." Their conversation was interrupted by Emily's nightmares, a frequent occurrence. Both women rushed to comfort her, and something shifted in that moment. They weren't competing for maternal rights, they were collaborating in love. The three adults, Elizabeth, Sarah, and Dr. Wilson, created a support system around the children. Wilson's medical expertise helped with Emma's development, while his gentle presence provided a father figure Emily had never known. His connection with Sarah, born of shared trauma and resilience, added another layer to their expanding family circle. "We're quite the unconventional group," Wilson observed one Sunday as they all shared dinner. Emily was teaching Sarah to use chopsticks while Emma gurgled happily in Elizabeth's arms. "Convention is overrated," Elizabeth replied, watching her found family with pride. "Love isn't about following rules, it's about creating safe spaces for healing." As weeks passed, their bonds strengthened. Emily's nightmares decreased, replaced by dreams she eagerly shared at breakfast. Emma thrived under the attention of three devoted parents. Sarah's recovery accelerated, fueled by the joy of rebuilding relationships with her daughters. But beneath their growing happiness lay the knowledge that Cooper and his network still lurked in the shadows. Their family's peace was built on vigilant security systems, safe words, escape plans carefully memorized. Yet even this uncertainty couldn't diminish the miracle of their connection. Detective Hayes spread surveillance photos across Elizabeth's office desk, each image revealing another layer of St. Mary's corruption. "We've mapped the entire operation," she explained, pointing to staff photographs. "Every shift has at least one of Cooper's people. They identify vulnerable patients, especially pregnant women without strong family connections." Dr. Wilson entered, carrying a thick folder. "I've traced the money," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Cooper's foundation accepts donations from wealthy families always after their daughters mysteriously disappear. The amounts range from $5 to $10 million. Elizabeth studied a financial report. These donations are then laundered through hospital renovations that never happen. Look at these construction companies, they all lead back to shell corporations. Amy Parker joined them, still adjusting to her role as key witness. "I've identified 15 nurses and 5 doctors who were placed here by Cooper. All orphans, all with mysteriously altered records. He built his network using people who had no one to question their backgrounds." Hayes picked up a patient file. Sarah wasn't the first to try exposing them. 3 other women attempted to contact authorities. All 3 suffered accidents before they could testify. She paused. 2 fatal, 1 permanently silenced in a mental institution. Elizabeth's phone buzzed Rebecca with an urgent update. "Mrs. Morgan, Congressman Williams just announced a congressional hearing on hospital adoption practices. He's positioning himself to control the investigation." "He's trying to get ahead of the story," Hayes growled. "If he leads the investigation, he can bury the evidence." Dr. Wilson studied security footage from the hospital's restricted floor. "Look at this pattern. Every Tuesday night, pregnant women are moved from the private wing to the service elevator. They reappear in records as having left the hospital, but there's no footage of them exiting. Because they never leave," Amy interjected. "There's a sub-basement level, officially condemned after flooding damage. That's where they keep them until they give birth." Elizabeth's blood ran cold. "How many women are down there right now?" "At least 6, Amy replied, her hands shaking. "All marked in records as voluntary departures or transfers to private care." Hayes studied blueprints of the hospital. The sub-basement doesn't appear on recent plans. It's been completely erased from official records. "Not completely," Dr. Wilson corrected, pulling out an old architectural drawing. "I found this in the city archives. There's a service tunnel connecting the sub-basement to an old maintenance building 3 blocks away. That's how they move the women without being seen." Elizabeth's security chief entered with new surveillance photos. "We've identified the maintenance building. It's owned by a company called New Life Adoptions, registered to Cooper's sister-in-law." "The perfect cover," Hayes observed. "Women enter St. Mary's pregnant, are moved underground to give birth, then disappear through the tunnel. Meanwhile, wealthy clients collect their adopted babies through a seemingly legitimate agency." Amy pointed to a calendar. Cooper's hosting a hospital fundraiser next week. All the major players will be their donors, doctors, politicians involved in the network. Perfect time to gather evidence, Hayes mused. Everyone in one place, likely discussing business they think is private. Elizabeth opened her laptop, showing encrypted emails. My tech team cracked Cooper's private server. He's getting sloppy, making mistakes. Look at this exchange with Williams about merchandise delivery schedules. Dr. Wilson's face darkened. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're so confident in their power that they're practically flaunting it. That confidence will be their downfall, Elizabeth declared. Hayes, can your FBI contacts arrange surveillance for the fundraiser? Already in motion. We'll have undercover agents as servers, security, even guests. Rebecca entered with more files. Mrs. Morgan, I've compiled backgrounds on every hospital board member. 3 have daughters who disappeared within the last decade. All 3 families made large donations to Cooper's foundation shortly after. Blackmail, Elizabeth realized. He's not just selling babies, he's forcing the parents to become complicit. Once they pay to make their pregnant daughters disappear, they're trapped in his web. The scope of corruption was staggering. Every new piece of evidence revealed more tentacles of Cooper's operation, reaching into law enforcement, politics, and the highest levels of society. We need to move carefully, Hayes warned. One wrong step, and they'll destroy everything evidence, witnesses, even the women currently trapped in that sub-basement. Elizabeth stood, moving to her window. Below, St. Mary's Hospital gleamed in the afternoon sun, its respectable facade masking unimaginable horrors. No, she said firmly, we've played defense long enough. It's time to bring it all down. The first warning came at dawn. Rebecca found her car's brake lines cut, a child's toy left on the driver's seat. Hours later, Dr. Wilson's mother received photos of her house taken from different angles, each marked with a red X. They're escalating, Hayes said, examining the evidence in Elizabeth's secure conference room. Classic intimidation tactics. Show they can reach anyone, anywhere. Sarah, still recovering in Elizabeth's penthouse, received a more personal threat. A delivery arrived, her old debutante dress from the governor's gala, now stained with what looked like blood. The note read, Emily looks just like you at that age. Elizabeth doubled security, adding ex-military guards to the rotation. She moved Wilson's mother to a safe house and relocated Rebecca to the penthouse's guest suite. But Cooper's network proved resourceful. Amy Parker's office was ransacked, patient files scattered everywhere except those documenting suspicious births. Those had vanished. Her home computer was hacked, years of careful record-keeping erased. They're trying to destroy the evidence before the fundraiser, Wilson observed, holding Amy as she shook with fear and rage. But they don't know about our backups. But the threats grew bolder. Judge Harrison, who had been secretly cooperating with Hayes, found his teenage daughter's college acceptance mysteriously rescinded. The message was clear: everyone had something to lose. Elizabeth received her own warning during a board meeting. A video played on the conference room screen footage of Grace's fatal accident, followed by current images of Emily at school and Emma in the park. The board members sat in horrified silence as Elizabeth maintained her composure even as her hands trembled beneath the table. You think this frightens me, she addressed the empty air, knowing Cooper's people were watching. You've already taken everything once. Never again. That night, as Elizabeth checked on the sleeping children, Sarah appeared beside her. We should leave, she whispered. Take the girls and disappear. I know how to run, how to hide. Elizabeth touched Emma's tiny hand, then smoothed Emily's hair. No, she replied firmly. Running lets them win, lets them keep hurting other families. We stop this here. But the next day, Hayes arrived with news. 2 potential witnesses, nurses who had agreed to testify, had vanished. Their apartments were immaculate, passports missing, resignation letters perfectly typed. Too perfect. "They're cleaning house," Hayes growled. "Anyone who might talk is being eliminated or disappeared." Dr. Wilson studied the nurses' personnel files. Both came from foster care backgrounds. No family to ask questions, just like the others Cooper recruited. Rebecca's network of contacts reported similar patterns across the country. Mysterious accidents, sudden relocations, people vanishing just before they could expose similar operations in other hospitals. The pressure mounted as the fundraiser approached. Amy received medical records from her past procedures she had no memory of, signed with her name but not her signature. "They're going to claim I'm unstable," she realized. "That I fabricated everything." Wilson held her hand. "They can't erase who you are, Amy. Not anymore." Elizabeth's company faced sudden SEC investigations, tax audits, and suspicious reports about offshore accounts. Her board members received anonymous tips about alleged misconduct. Clients began pulling investments. "They're trying to destroy your credibility," Hayes observed. "Make any accusations you make seem like revenge for financial troubles." But each threat strengthened Elizabeth's resolve. She converted her liquid assets to untraceable accounts, secured her evidence in multiple locations, and prepared for war. The final warning came 3 days before the fundraiser. A small package arrived at the penthouse at Carousel Horse, painted black, with a note, "Every mother's nightmare is losing a child. Are you ready to lose 3? Elizabeth gathered her unlikely family: Sarah, Wilson, Amy, Hayes, Rebecca, and the children in her secure panic room. "Tomorrow," she announced, "we end this. Not just for us, but for every family they've destroyed." She looked at each face, seeing not fear but determination. These people, brought together by tragedy and corruption, had become something Cooper could never understand: a family bound by choice rather than blood, strengthened by adversity rather than broken by it. "Let them threaten us," Elizabeth declared. "Every warning shows their desperation. Every attempt to silence us proves what they fear most: the truth." As they finalized their plans for the fundraiser, Emily tugged at Elizabeth's sleeve. "Are the bad men coming for us?" she asked, her young voice steady. Elizabeth knelt before her. "No, sweetheart. We're going after them. And this time, they're the ones who should be afraid." The hospital fundraiser was in full swing when Elizabeth's secure phone buzzed, the one connected only to Emily's security detail. Her blood froze at the text code read, "School breach. Moving to protocol grace." She caught Hayes' eye across the ballroom, giving the prearranged signal. Within seconds, her security team was mobilizing while maintaining the illusion of normalcy at the gala. At Emily's private school, chaos erupted. 2 men posing as federal agents had attempted to remove Emily from her classroom, presenting seemingly legitimate court orders. They hadn't counted on Elizabeth's security measures. Every staff member had been trained to recognize authentic credentials, and Emily wore a panic button disguised as a bracelet. "Target secure," came the update. "Moving to Safe House C, 2 hostiles in pursuit." Elizabeth maintained her composed facade, laughing at a donor's joke while her heart raced. Cooper stood across the room, his perfect smile never wavering. He knew this was his counter move. "Mrs. Morgan," he approached smoothly, "you seem distracted. Family matters." Before she could respond, another text arrived: "Vehicle disabled. Taking defensive position at checkpoint Delta." Dr. Wilson appeared at her elbow. "Elizabeth, your daughter's school called. Apparently there's been a misunderstanding about pickup authorization." Cooper's eyes glittered. "Oh dear. How unfortunate. Children's safety is so important these days. One can never be too careful." Elizabeth's phone showed the security feed. Emily huddled in a panic room with her protection detail, while armed men attempted to breach the reinforced door. The girl's face was tear-streaked but determined as she repeated the safety protocols Elizabeth had drilled into her. "Indeed," Elizabeth replied to Cooper, her voice arctic. "One should be especially careful about threatening children. It tends to bring out the worst in parents. Hayes was already coordinating with local police, but Elizabeth knew they'd arrived too late, deliberately delayed by Cooper's influence. This was the moment they'd prepared for, the reason she'd established multiple fallback positions and escape routes. Protocol, Grace. Phase 2, she texted. Within minutes, every major news outlet received anonymous evidence packages detailing Cooper's network. If anything happened to Emily, the entire operation would be exposed. The security feed showed the panic room door beginning to buckle. Emily's protection detail, ex-military professionals, took defensive positions. The girl herself remained remarkably calm, clutching the locket Elizabeth had given her, the one containing a GPS tracker and emergency beacon. "Your move," Elizabeth told Cooper quietly. "Those men either stand down or every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence goes public in the next 5 minutes, including the contents of Sarah Foster's storage unit." Cooper's smile faltered for the first time. "You're bluffing. Those files were destroyed." "Were they? Check your phone." He did, and she saw the moment he realized she'd outmaneuvered him. The first wave of evidence was already hitting social media, nothing incriminating enough to spook his people, but clear proof that more was coming. "Stand down," Cooper barked into his phone. On the security feed, the men attacking the panic room immediately retreated. But Elizabeth watched them go, her heart pounding. "If anything happens to Emily or Emma or Sarah or anyone else I care about, everything comes out. No warnings, no negotiations, no deals." "You have no idea what you're dealing with," Cooper hissed. "No," Elizabeth corrected him. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm not one of your vulnerable girls, Cooper. I'm a mother who's already lost one child. Do you really want to find out what I'm capable of?" The security feed showed Emily emerging from the panic room, shaken but safe. Her protection detail swept her away through a pre-planned escape route, heading for a safe house only Elizabeth knew about. "The game's changed," Elizabeth told Cooper. "You're not hunting frightened teenagers anymore. You're facing a woman with resources equal to yours and nothing left to lose. Remember that the next time you think about threatening my family." She turned to leave, but Cooper caught her arm. "This isn't over, Elizabeth." "No," she agreed, "but for the first time, you're not the one controlling how it ends." As she left the gala, Elizabeth received confirmation that Emily was secure. The girl had followed every safety protocol perfectly, proving that even at 7, she understood the stakes of their war. St. Mary's Hospital's pristine corridors became a battlefield at midnight. Elizabeth Hayes and Dr. Wilson moved silently through the service entrance, their steps echoing in the empty halls. The fundraiser had been a distraction while Cooper's attention was focused on Emily. Their real mission was about to begin. "Security cameras are looped," Rebecca confirmed through their earpieces. "You have 20 minutes before the next staff rotation." They reached the condemned elevator that led to the sub-basement. Amy Parker waited there, her face pale but determined. "6 women down there," she whispered, "all in their 3rd trimester. Cooper's planning to move them tonight." Hayes checked her weapon. "FBI tactical team is in position outside the tunnel exit. If Cooper's people try to evacuate, they'll be caught." The elevator groaned as they descended into darkness. Elizabeth's heart pounded, remembering Sarah's description of this place. The doors opened to a scene from a nightmare, a fully equipped medical ward, hidden from the world. "Oh God," Wilson breathed. In separate rooms they found the women, some barely more than girls, each monitored by sophisticated medical equipment. All showed signs of sedation. "Just like Sarah," Elizabeth murmured, checking pulses. "They keep them drugged to prevent resistance." A noise at the end of the corridor froze them in place. Footsteps approached multiple sets, moving with purpose. Company, Hayes warned, taking position. The lights suddenly blazed to full brightness. William Cooper stood at the corridor's end, flanked by security guards and Dr. Charles Bennett, the hospital's chief of surgery. "I must admit," Cooper said smoothly, "I underestimated you, Elizabeth. Using Emily's situation to distract me while you staged this little raid? Impressive." "This ends tonight," Elizabeth replied, her voice steady. "These women are leaving with us." Cooper smiled. "These women are receiving private medical care at their family's request. All perfectly documented." He held up a file. "Signed consent forms, witness statements, judge's orders." Forged, Hayes countered. "Just like the papers you used to try taking Emily." "Prove it," Cooper challenged. "Every document is legally binding. Every procedure approved by licensed medical professionals." He nodded to Dr. Bennett. "Right, Charles?" Bennett wouldn't meet their eyes. Elizabeth recognized the look, the same one her father had worn when choosing silence over justice. "Tell them," Charles Wilson urged his colleague. "Tell them about the real records, the ones you've been copying for months." Bennett's head snapped up. Cooper's smile faltered. "Insurance," Wilson explained. "Charles knew this day would come. He's been documenting everything: real patient files, proof of forgeries, records of every baby sold." "You're lying," Cooper snarled. "The files are already with the FBI," Hayes added, "along with testimony from 3 board members who've agreed to cooperate." Cooper's composure cracked. "Kill the women," he ordered his guards. "No witnesses." "Try it," Elizabeth's voice cut through the tension. "Every major news outlet is live streaming this conversation. Hidden cameras, Cooper. The whole world is watching." On cue, Rebecca's voice came through their earpieces. "Live feeds confirmed. All networks carrying the story." Cooper lunged for Elizabeth, but Wilson intercepted him. In the chaos that followed, Hayes' FBI team breached from both ends of the corridor. Cooper's guards, faced with overwhelming force and live exposure, surrendered. "William Cooper," Hayes began, cuffing him personally, "you're under arrest for kidnapping, human trafficking, conspiracy." "You've destroyed everything," Cooper spat at Elizabeth. "No," she corrected him. "I've stopped you from destroying any more lives." The women were evacuated to waiting ambulances, each accompanied by legitimate medical staff. Dr. Bennett provided a full confession, trading testimony for leniency. Within hours, the story broke worldwide. Prominent hospital exposed as front for trafficking operation. Elizabeth watched as Cooper was led away, his empire crumbling around him. Her phone buzzed a text from Sarah Emily's safe. "We're watching the news. You did it." But even in handcuffs, Cooper managed one final threat. "You think this is over?" He laughed. "I'm not the only one, Elizabeth. There are others in every city. And now they know about you." Elizabeth met his gaze steadily. "Good, let them come. Because now they know what happens when they threaten the wrong family." The media explosion following Cooper's arrest was unprecedented. Elizabeth watched from her office as every major network ran the footage from St. Mary's. The hidden cameras had captured everything: the underground ward, Cooper's confession, the rescue of 6 pregnant women held against their will. "Congressman Williams just resigned," Rebecca announced, rushing in with updates. "FBI raided his offices an hour ago. They found detailed records of every transaction, every victim." Hayes arrived with more news. "It's spreading. 3 other hospitals in different states have been exposed. Cooper's network was bigger than we imagined. The dominoes are falling." Elizabeth's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Victims and their families, emboldened by Cooper's arrest, were coming forward. Each story was more horrifying than the last: daughters who'd vanished, babies stolen, lives destroyed by powerful men who'd thought themselves untouchable. Sarah Foster's testimony just went public, Wilson reported, bringing in a tablet with the live broadcast. Sarah, still recovering but strong, faced the cameras with dignity as she detailed her ordeal. "I'm speaking out today." Sarah's voice filled the office, not just for my daughters, but for every woman they silenced, every child they stole, every family they destroyed. This ends now. The evidence from Storage Unit 247 proved devastating. Cooper's meticulous records implicated judges, politicians, hospital administrators across the country. His insurance policy became his undoing. He documented everything, believing his power would protect him. District Attorney's Office is moving fast, Hayes said. They've issued warrants for 37 arrests just in this city, including 3 family court judges who helped falsify adoption records. Elizabeth's investment firm had become command central for the expanding investigation. Rebecca coordinated with journalists, ensuring each revelation reached the public. Wilson and Amy worked with medical boards, exposing corrupt doctors and administrators. Cooper's overseas connections are unraveling, Rebecca added. Interpol just raided adoption agencies in 3 countries. They're finding matching records, proof of where the babies were sent. The stock market reflected the chaos as prominent figures fell. Companies tied to Cooper's network saw their shares plummet. Elizabeth's own company faced scrutiny, but her transparency about her role in exposing the conspiracy turned public opinion in her favor. 6 more whistleblowers have come forward, Hayes announced. All hospital staff, all with documentation. They were waiting for someone to crack Cooper's shield of invulnerability. Sarah arrived with Emily and Emma, their security detail in tow. Emily ran to Elizabeth, wrapping her arms around her waist. "The bad men are going away?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart," Elizabeth assured her. "They can't hurt anyone anymore." Sarah joined them at the window, watching news vans gather below. "I never thought this day would come," she said softly. "I'd given up hope." "Hope," Elizabeth replied, "is what they tried to steal from all of us. Taking it back is our greatest victory." Wilson entered with Amy, carrying more files. Medical board is suspending licenses across the country. Every doctor involved in Cooper's network is being investigated. "My sister called," Amy added, her voice trembling. She saw the news. She remembered she was one of their victims 15 years ago. Her baby, my niece. "We'll find her," Elizabeth promised. "We'll find all of them." The evidence kept mounting. Cooper's network had operated for decades, destroying countless lives. But in trying to silence Elizabeth by threatening Emily, he'd finally targeted someone with the resources and resolve to bring him down. Rebecca's computer chimed with a news alert. They found the records from St. Christopher's orphanage fire. Cooper didn't destroy everything. There's proof it was deliberately set to cover up his first trafficking operation. "Full circle," Wilson murmured, holding Amy's hand. "Where it all began." Elizabeth gathered her unlikely family, Sarah, the children, Wilson, Amy, Hayes, Rebecca, and looked at each face. These people, brought together by tragedy, had become something powerful. Something Cooper could never understand. "This isn't just exposure," she told them. "This is revolution. Every victim finding their voice. Every survivor reclaiming their story. Every family healing." Emma stirred in Sarah's arms, and Emily leaned against Elizabeth's side. In that moment, watching Cooper's network crumble on a dozen news channels, Elizabeth felt something she'd thought died with Grace, hope for a better world. "They thought power made them invincible," she said softly. "They never understood that real strength comes from love, from family, from refusing to be silenced." The sun set over the city, painting the sky in colors of change. The news would continue for weeks as the full scope of Cooper's network was exposed. But in Elizabeth's office, holding her found family close, the victory was already complete. The attack came at 3 a.m. when darkness was deepest. Elizabeth was awake, reviewing case files in her study, when the penthouse security system went dark. 1 second later, the backup power failed, something that shouldn't have been possible. "Rebecca," she called through the intercom. No response. Her phone showed no signal. They'd been cut off completely. Glass shattered somewhere in the East Wing. Elizabeth moved silently down the hallway, her heart pounding. The children were in the panic room with Sarah's standard procedure during nighttime hours, but Rebecca had been working late in the guest suite. A muffled scream confirmed her worst fears. Elizabeth pressed against the wall, listening to multiple sets of footsteps moving through her home. Professional, methodical. These weren't common criminals. Find the children, a voice commanded. Cooper wants proof. Elizabeth reached the hidden panel beside Emma's nursery, pressing the sequence that would alert Hayes without needing phone service. Then she heard Rebecca's voice, tight with pain. I don't know where they are, Rebecca insisted. The panic room relocates randomly. Even I don't know which floor it's on. A sharp slap echoed through the darkness. Don't lie to us. You're her right hand. You know everything. Elizabeth weighed her options. The children were safe in the rotating panic room, her most expensive security measure. But Rebecca, images of other accidents arranged by Cooper's network flashed through her mind. A floorboard creaked behind her. Elizabeth spun, but too late. A cloth pressed against her face, sweet-smelling chemicals overwhelming her senses. As consciousness faded, she saw men in tactical gear moving through her home with military precision. We've got the primary target, someone reported. Keep searching for the others. Elizabeth fought the darkness, focusing on one thought: she had to stay awake, had to protect them, had to. The world went black. She woke to Rebecca's voice, urgent and afraid. Mrs. Morgan. Elizabeth, please wake up. They were zip-tied to chairs in Elizabeth's own living room. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the city lights flickering like distant stars. 4 men stood guard, while a 5th, clearly the leader, spoke quietly into a radio. The panic room's shielded, he reported. We can't breach it without risking the children, but we have Morgan and her assistant. Elizabeth tested her restraints. Professional work, no escape there. Her head throbbed from the chloroform, but she forced herself to focus, to count exits, evaluate threats, look for advantages. Cooper sends his regards, the leader approached, his face obscured by a tactical mask. He'd like you to reconsider your position regarding the evidence you've collected. Cooper's in jail. Elizabeth's voice was hoarse but steady. You're working for ghosts. He held up a phone, showing a live video feed. Cooper, in what appeared to be a luxury apartment, not a jail cell. You really think a man with his connections would stay imprisoned? Rebecca gasped. Elizabeth felt cold fear settle in her stomach. If Cooper had escaped. Here's the deal, the leader continued. You publicly retract your accusations, claim you fabricated evidence for personal gain. Your company takes the fall, but your family lives. And if I refuse? He gestured to the window. 40-story drop. Tragic murder-suicide. Grieving CEO, devastated by fraud allegations, kills her assistant before taking her own life. Elizabeth met Rebecca's terrified eyes, trying to convey reassurance she didn't feel. Somewhere above them, Sarah huddled with Emily and Emma in a panic room that wouldn't stay hidden forever. Somewhere in the city, Cooper watched and waited. The leader's radio crackled. Sir, we found something. Sub-level 3. Elizabeth's heart stopped. That's where she'd hidden her most damaging evidence against Cooper. In the chaos of protecting the children, she'd forgotten about the safe room beneath her wine cellar. Final chance, the leader said. Cooperate or we start making examples. The chaos in Elizabeth's penthouse reached a crescendo when the power suddenly returned. Emergency lights flooded every room, temporarily blinding the intruders. In that moment of confusion, Sarah's voice came through the hidden speaker system. Elizabeth, they've found us. I'm taking the children out through Protocol Echo. I love you both. The leader grabbed his radio. All units to the east stairwell. They're using the evacuation route. Elizabeth's heart raced. Protocol Echo was their most desperate escape plan, a dangerous path through the building's old maintenance shafts. Sarah would have to carry Emma while guiding Emily through narrow passages never meant for human transit. Ma and one of the men called from the hallway. We found their entry point. They're heading for the garage level. The leader cursed, ordering his team to split up. 2 men remained to guard Elizabeth and Rebecca while the others pursued Sarah and the children. Through the chaos, Elizabeth caught a glimpse of something that made her blood run cold, a familiar gold pin on the leader's tactical vest. The same pin worn by Cooper's hospital board members. Minutes stretched like hours. The radio crackled with updates as Sarah led her pursuers on a desperate chase through the building's infrastructure. Elizabeth strained against her restraints, feeling them bite into her wrists as she silently urged Sarah to run faster, hide better. Then came the sound that would haunt Elizabeth's nightmares, Emma's cry, echoing through the radio, followed by Emily's scream and a massive crash. "Target spotted in Sector 7," a voice reported. The woman and the baby made it to the garage. "The older girl is with them. Wait, someone else is there." The leader's radio exploded with confused chatter. Gunshots, breaking glass, squealing tires. "We lost them," someone shouted. Black SUV, no plates, headed east on 47th Street. Elizabeth's guards received new orders through their earpieces. Without a word, they cut her and Rebecca free and disappeared, leaving them alone in the devastated penthouse. Hayes arrived with a tactical team 10 minutes later, but it was too late. The garage security cameras told a partial story. Sarah, clutching Emma and pulling Emily behind her, had almost reached their emergency vehicle when another SUV appeared. The footage showed Sarah pushing Emily toward their car before being forced into the unknown vehicle with Emma. The last frame captured Sarah's face, mouth open in a silent scream as Emma reached tiny hands toward freedom. "She saved Emily," Rebecca whispered, watching the footage. She could have surrendered with both children, but she made sure Emily got away. Emily, now safe with Dr. Wilson at a secure location, was inconsolable. "Mummy said to split up," she sobbed through the phone. She said Emma was too little to run fast enough. She said to tell Elizabeth she's sorry. The investigation revealed more questions than answers. The SUV's trail went cold after 3 blocks. No demands were received. No ransom notes. Sarah and Emma had vanished as completely as if they'd never existed. Elizabeth stood in Emma's nursery, touching the empty crib. Sarah's sacrifice haunted her, the choice no mother should have to make, saving one child by surrendering with the other. Somewhere out there, Sarah was either fighting for survival or... Elizabeth couldn't complete the thought. Hayes appeared in the doorway. "We found this in the garage." She held out a crumpled piece of paper, stained with what looked like blood. "In Sarah's handwriting, storage unit 731. The truth about Cooper's escape. Keep Emily safe." Elizabeth clutched the note, fresh determination replacing her despair. Sarah hadn't given up. She'd left them a clue, a way to fight back. Now they just had to decode it before time ran out for both her and Emma. Storage Unit 731 became their priority, but Dr. Wilson insisted on investigating alone. "It's too dangerous for you," he told Elizabeth. "Emily needs at least one of us alive." The storage facility was on the outskirts of town, surrounded by abandoned warehouses. Wilson parked a block away, following Sarah's detailed instructions found hidden in the note's watermark. As he approached Unit 731, his medical training told him something was wrong. The air carried a faint, sweet smell. Inside, he found more than documents. The unit contained a makeshift medical facility, complete with monitoring equipment and surgical supplies. On a small desk sat a single file labeled Operation Phoenix. The first page revealed Cooper's entire escape plan. Corrupt guards, falsified transfer orders, a body double in his cell. But it was the second page that made Wilson's blood run cold, detailed medical protocols for handling pregnant women during extended transport. He was photographing the evidence when the first symptom hit dizziness, followed by tunnel vision. The sweet smell. Too late he recognized it. Carbon monoxide being pumped in through the ventilation system. Wilson staggered toward the exit, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. He managed to hit the emergency alert on his phone before collapsing. The last thing he saw was the unit's door swinging shut, trapping him inside with the invisible killer. Elizabeth, monitoring from her office, received the alert and dispatched her security team immediately. They found Wilson unconscious, barely breathing. The storage facility's security cameras had been disabled, but a nearby traffic camera caught a crucial detail: a hospital maintenance van leaving the scene. The next 72 hours became a vigil in the ICU. Amy refused to leave her brother's side, while Elizabeth split her time between the hospital and caring for Emily, who was traumatized by the possibility of losing another person she loved. He found something Hayes said, reviewing the photos Wilson had managed to send before collapsing. Look at these protocols. They're not just moving women between facilities. They're keeping them sedated for weeks, even months. Elizabeth studied the medical details. These drugs, they're the same ones they used on Sarah in the sub-basement. They're still operating even with Cooper in custody. Wilson drifted in and out of consciousness, fighting for his life as the carbon monoxide poisoning attacked his system. During one lucid moment, he grabbed Elizabeth's hand. The van, he whispered. Check the van. Hayes' team traced the hospital maintenance van to a warehouse registered to one of Cooper's shell companies. Inside, they found evidence of recent occupation medical supplies, food wrappers, and a discarded baby bottle. They were here, Elizabeth realized. Sarah and Emma were here. But the true breakthrough came from Wilson's damaged phone. In his last conscious moments, he'd managed to photograph one more document, a shipping manifest for medical equipment being transferred to a private facility in the mountains. Wilson's condition stabilized after 4 days, though doctors warned of possible permanent damage to his heart. Emily was allowed to visit, her small hand clutching his, as she made him promise never to go away like her mummy did. I promise, Wilson told her, his voice weak but determined. We're going to find them, Emily. All of us together. The attempt on Wilson's life changed the game. Cooper wasn't just running a trafficking operation, he was rebuilding it, even from custody. The mountain facility, the medical protocols, the elaborate escape plan. All pointed to something bigger than they'd imagined. Elizabeth stood at Wilson's hospital window, watching Emily curl up beside him on the bed, finally sleeping after days of nightmares. They'd almost lost him, just as they'd lost Sarah and Emma. But each loss, each near tragedy, only strengthened their resolve. We need to end this, Wilson said softly, careful not to wake Emily. Whatever it takes. Elizabeth nodded, her expression hardening. Whatever it takes. The mountain facility loomed before them, a sprawling private hospital nestled in dense forest. Elizabeth studied the blueprints Hayes had obtained, while Wilson, still recovering but insistent on participating, marked potential entry points. Mom's locket, Emily said suddenly, looking up from her drawing. The one in the picture with the baby. Elizabeth turned to the girl. What picture, sweetheart? Emily ran to her backpack, pulling out a crumpled photograph she'd kept hidden. It showed a young woman holding a baby, a distinctive gold locket around her neck. I found it in your office. The lady looks like you. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she took the photo. This is my mother. Where did you find this? In the box with the hospital papers. There was writing on the back. Elizabeth turned the photo over. In faded ink, Margaret and William, St. Christopher's Hospital, 1975. Billy's first day home with his sister Elizabeth. The world tilted on its axis. William, she whispered. William Cooper. Hayes burst into the room, waving a DNA report. Elizabeth, the tests came back. The samples from Cooper's office. They show a familial match to you. Wilson took the photo, studying it carefully. The locket. It's the same design as the one Sarah left with Emma. The one with the memory card. Memories flooded back fragments of a life before the foster system. A baby brother given up for adoption when their mother died. Elizabeth too young to remember more than feelings of loss and abandonment. That's why he targeted me, Elizabeth realized. The car accident that killed Grace. It wasn't random. William Foster wasn't just some drunk driver. He worked for Cooper for my brother. Rebecca arrived with more files. I found the adoption records. After your mother died, William was adopted by the Coopers, a wealthy family with connections to St. Christopher's Orphanage, the same orphanage that later burned. He knew, Elizabeth said softly. All this time he knew we were siblings. He watched me build my company, marry Thomas, have Grace. And then he systematically destroyed everything I loved. But why, Wilson asked, why target his own sister? Hayes opened her laptop, displaying more records. Look at this. The Coopers weren't just wealthy, they were part of a generations-old network trafficking children through private adoptions. When they adopted William, they weren't looking for a son. They were grooming a successor. But Elizabeth paced the room, pieces falling into place. The accident that killed Grace. It was a message. A reminder of what happens to children in our family. He was showing me that he had the power to take everything, just like they took him. The storage unit, Wilson added, the medical protocols for pregnant women. They're not just selling babies, they're recreating what happened to you and William. Taking children from vulnerable mothers, erasing their true identities. Emily tugged at Elizabeth's sleeve. Is the bad man really your brother? Elizabeth knelt before her. Sometimes, sweetheart, people who are hurt very badly learn the wrong lessons. They think hurting others will fix their own pain. Hayes' phone buzzed. Elizabeth, Cooper's requesting a meeting. Just you at St. Christopher's, the old orphanage site. It's a trap, Wilson protested. Of course it is, Elizabeth agreed. But it's also our chance to find Sarah and Emma. He wants to finish what his adoptive family started, proving that blood means nothing compared to power. She picked up her mother's locket, so similar to the one Sarah had left with Emma. He thinks knowing we're siblings will make me weak, make me hesitate. But he's wrong. Understanding why he became a monster doesn't excuse what he's done. Rebecca entered with satellite images of the mountain facility. Security just changed shifts. If Cooper's meeting you at St. Christopher's, then the facility will be vulnerable. Hayes finished. We can get a team in, find Sarah and Emma while he's focused on you. Elizabeth touched the photo of her mother one last time before slipping it into her pocket. William chose his path long ago. He had the same start as me, loss, abandonment, pain, but he chose to become like the people who hurt us, While you chose to protect others, Wilson completed softly, to build a family based on love instead of power. Emily hugged Elizabeth fiercely. Don't let the bad man hurt you, even if he's your brother. Elizabeth held her close, thinking of Sarah and Emma, of Grace, of all the children William had stolen. Some wounds can't be healed, she told Emily, but they can be prevented from hurting anyone else. She stood, facing her team, her true family. Let's end this. Not just for us, but for every child they've ever taken, including the little boy my brother used to be. The mountain facility yielded more secrets than they'd expected. While Elizabeth prepared for her meeting with Cooper, Hayes' team discovered a hidden records room. Inside, decades of carefully preserved documentation revealed a pattern that changed everything. These aren't just trafficking records, Rebecca said, scanning documents into her tablet. They're genealogies. Cooper's network wasn't random, they were targeting specific bloodlines. Wilson studied a family tree chart covering one wall. Look at this. Sarah's maternal line. It traces back to the Lancaster fortune, the family that disappeared in the 1960s banking scandal. Hayes pulled up historical records on her laptop. The Lancasters didn't just disappear. They were systematically eliminated, all except one infant daughter supposedly killed in a house fire. But she survived, Elizabeth realized, and her daughter is Sarah. The evidence was irrefutable. Sarah Foster wasn't just another victim, she was the last Lancaster heir, entitled to one of the largest fortunes in banking history. Her adoption by the Fosters had been arranged by Cooper's network, placing her with a family they controlled. That's why they watched her so closely, Rebecca said. Why they panicked when she started investigating them. She wasn't just any witness, she was their most valuable asset. Emily, coloring quietly in the corner, looked up. Is that why Mummy knew all the secret ways to hide? Because she's a princess. Elizabeth smiled sadly. Something like that, sweetheart. Your mummy comes from a very important family, one that bad people tried to steal from. Hayes spread out more documents. The Lancasters were investigating the same trafficking network back in the 60s. They'd discovered that prominent families were selling their children to cover gambling debts, hide scandals, or simply for profit. And Cooper's adoptive family orchestrated their downfall, Wilson added, eliminating everyone who could expose them, except baby Sarah's grandmother, who they couldn't find. Elizabeth's phone chimed a message from an unknown number. Attached was a photo of Sarah and Emma, clearly taken recently. Sarah was unconscious on a hospital bed, while Emma lay in a bassinet nearby. Behind them, through a window, snow-covered mountains were visible. But they're moving them, Elizabeth said. Cooper's meeting is a diversion. While we're at St. Christopher's, they're transferring Sarah and Emma to another facility. Rebecca enlarged the photo, focusing on a detail in the background. That painting on the wall, it's a Lancaster family heirloom. I recognize it from the historical records. They're taunting us, Hayes growled, showing us they know Sarah's true identity. Wilson studied the mountain view in the photo. Those peaks, they match the view from only one side of this facility. They're in the east wing, probably near the helipad. Emily tugged at Elizabeth's sleeve again. The bad men want Mommy's money. They already have it, sweetheart, Elizabeth explained gently. They've been using it all these years, hiding it through fake adoptions and medical facilities. That's why they're so powerful. Hayes' team mapped the facility's security systems while Wilson coordinated with medical staff they trusted. The rescue would have to be precise. One mistake and Cooper's people would disappear with Sarah and Emma forever. Her grandmother, Elizabeth said suddenly. The one they never found. What if she's still alive? Rebecca was already searching databases. Margaret Lancaster, last known sighting in. My God, Elizabeth, look at this. The screen showed a recent photo of an elderly woman, the same woman who had been volunteering at St. Mary's Hospital for the past 20 years. The same woman who had helped dozens of Cooper's victims escape. She's been fighting them all along, Wilson realized, working from the inside, protecting as many children as she could, just like she protected Sarah's mother. Elizabeth felt tears in her eyes. Sarah never knew. All those years hiding, running, fighting, she had an ally right there. A grandmother who never stopped looking for her family. We need to get her out now, Hayes insisted. Before Cooper realizes we know the truth about Sarah's inheritance. Emily held up her drawing, a family tree of her own, with Sarah, Elizabeth, and all their allies connected by bright crayon lines. We're all family now, she declared, and family saves each other. Elizabeth squeezed Emily's hand, then turned to her team. Cooper thinks old money and corrupt power make him invincible. But he forgot something crucial. What's that? Wilson asked. The Lancasters lost everything trying to expose this network, but they never stopped fighting. Sarah survived, gathered evidence for years. Now we know why she was so good at it. It's in her blood. The blood of people who chose justice over wealth, truth over power. Like you, Emily said simply. Elizabeth hugged her close. like all of us. Now let's go get your mummy and sister back. The rescue operation was set when Dr. Wilson discovered the final piece of the puzzle. He was reviewing old hospital records when a familiar name caught his eye: Dr. Thomas Morgan, emergency room attending St. Mary's Hospital, 1995 to 2000. Elizabeth, he called, his voice unsteady. I need to show you something. She joined him at the computer, and her breath caught. There was Thomas, her late husband, younger but unmistakable in his white coat. I knew he worked at St. Mary's before we met, but... Look at the cases he was investigating. Wilson pulled up more files. Suspicious injuries in children, unexplained deaths, irregularities in adoption papers. He was gathering evidence against Cooper's network 15 years ago. Elizabeth sank into a chair. The accident. It wasn't just about Grace, was it? No, Wilson's voice was gentle. Thomas was close to exposing everything. I was his resident then, helping him collect data. When the crash happened, I was supposed to be in that car too. The revelation hit Elizabeth like a physical blow. You knew Thomas. Wilson nodded. He was my mentor, my friend. He asked me to meet him that morning, said he had proof of something big. But I was called into emergency surgery when I heard about the accident. You thought it was meant for you too, Elizabeth finished. I transferred to pediatrics after that, tried to protect children in my own way. I never knew Thomas had married, had a daughter. Not until you walked into my ER with Emily and Nema. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she touched the screen, tracing Thomas's face. He never told me about the investigation. He was trying to protect me. He was a hero, Wilson said softly. And when I realized who you were, I knew I had to help, to finish what he started. Hayes burst in. Elizabeth, we found something else. The drunk driver, William Foster, he died in prison last month. Supposedly suicide, but look at this, she showed them autopsy photos. The same drugs Cooper's network uses, but they're cleaning house, Elizabeth realized, eliminating everyone who knows the truth. That's why they took Sarah and Emma. Now they're erasing every trace of their operation. Wilson touched her shoulder. Thomas would be proud of you, Elizabeth, of how you've carried on his fight. Emily appeared in the doorway, clutching her ever-present sketchbook. I drew Daddy, she announced, holding up a picture. Mummy told me about him. She said he was brave like you. Elizabeth hugged her close, looking at the child's drawing of a man in a white coat. He was sweetheart, and now we know he was fighting the same battle we are. That's why you became a doctor, she asked Wilson. To help people like Daddy did. Wilson knelt beside her. That's right. Your daddy taught me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell the truth, no matter how dangerous it is. Hayes' phone buzzed with an alert. Cooper's team is mobilizing. They're starting the transfer in 1 hour. Elizabeth stood, newfound determination in her eyes. Thomas died trying to expose this network. Sarah risked everything to gather evidence. Now we have a chance to finish what they started. Wilson checked his medical kit. Cooper won't expect us to know about the mountain facility. He thinks he's drawn you away with the meeting at St. Christopher's. Let him think that, Elizabeth said. He spent years underestimating the power of real family, the kind built on love and sacrifice, not money and control. Emily tugged at Wilson's sleeve. Will you protect Elizabeth like you protected my mummy at the hospital? Wilson looked at Elizabeth, years of shared purpose passing between them. With my life, he promised, just like your daddy would have. Elizabeth gathered her team for final preparations. Each person there carried a piece of this story, Hayes with her unwavering pursuit of justice, Rebecca's tireless research, Wilson's connection to Thomas, and Emily's innocent wisdom that reminded them what they were fighting for. Thomas died protecting the truth, Elizabeth told them. Sarah sacrificed herself protecting her children. Now we honor their courage by ending this, not just for them, but for every family this network has torn apart. The mountain facility's security systems fell in precisely coordinated strikes. While Cooper waited at St. Christopher's, Hayes' FBI team breached the compound from 3 directions. Elizabeth and Wilson led the medical team, ready to treat any victims they found. East Wing clear, crackled the radio. West Wing secured, moving to Central Medical Unit. They found Sarah in the primary treatment room, already being woken from sedation by Margaret Lancaster, her grandmother, the undercover volunteer who had spent decades working to expose the network. "I couldn't tell you," Margaret whispered, holding Sarah's hand. "They watched too closely. But I've been waiting, gathering evidence, protecting everyone I could." Emma lay safely in a bassinet nearby, unharmed but distressed. When she saw Elizabeth, she reached out with tiny hands, her cries quieting as Elizabeth lifted her. "Cooper's been detained," Hayes announced, entering the room. "His meeting at St. Christopher's was a trap, but not for us. He never expected us to find Sarah's grandmother, to put all the pieces together." The evidence they discovered in the facility proved overwhelming. Hidden rooms contained decades of records, financial transactions, falsified medical documents, detailed accounts of every child bought and sold through their network. "Look at this," Rebecca called, examining computer files. "Offshore accounts, shell companies, everything linking back to the Lancaster fortune. They've been using Sarah's inheritance to fund their entire operation." Margaret held Emma while Sarah was stabilized for transport. "They thought erasing our family would protect them," she said quietly. "They never understood that truth doesn't die, it just waits for the right moment." Elizabeth watched as FBI teams led away doctors, nurses, and administrators, all part of Cooper's network, all now facing justice. Some broke down immediately, offering to testify. Others maintained their arrogant silence, still believing in Cooper's protection. Sarah regained consciousness as they prepared to leave, her first words a desperate question about her daughters. When she saw both Emily and Emma safe, her tears flowed freely. "It's over," Elizabeth told her, holding her hand. "Really over. Your grandmother helped us find you. Cooper's network is exposed. The Lancaster fortune will be restored to its rightful heirs." Outside, news helicopters circled as federal agents led away the last of Cooper's team. The mountain facility, once a fortress of secrets, now stood exposed in the harsh light of justice. "Emily drew this for you," Wilson told Sarah, showing her the child's latest picture, a family tree with branches connecting everyone who had fought to bring down the network. At the top, she had written in careful letters, "Love is stronger than bad men." Hayes coordinated with federal prosecutors, while Rebecca began the complex process of tracing and recovering stolen assets. The dismantling of Cooper's empire would take months, but its foundation was already crumbling. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, holding both her daughters close. Elizabeth looked at their unlikely family, Sarah and her children, Margaret, Wilson, Hayes, Rebecca, and all the others who had risked everything for justice. Now, she said, "We heal, and we make sure this never happens to another family." 6 months after the mountain facility raid, Elizabeth's penthouse buzzed with life. The space once designed for solitude had become a haven for their expanded family. Sarah and her daughters occupied the East Wing, while Margaret took the guest suite, making up for decades of lost time with her granddaughter. Emily's nightmares had gradually subsided, replaced by dreams she eagerly shared at breakfast. "I dreamed we were all in a big garden," she told them one morning. "Even Daddy was there, wearing his doctor coat." Sarah, watching Emma take her first steps toward Wilson's outstretched arms, had found peace in unexpected places. The Lancaster fortune, restored to her control, now funded a foundation dedicated to reuniting trafficked children with their families. "Sometimes healing comes from helping others heal," she told Elizabeth as they watched Emma toddle between them. "I thought running was my only option for so long. Now I know that standing together makes us stronger than hiding alone." Margaret spent hours sharing family stories with Emily, passing down the Lancaster legacy of courage and resilience. Your mother, she told the child, has the same strength that kept our family fighting for justice all these years. The prosecutors had built an airtight case. Cooper and his associates faced multiple life sentences. More importantly, their network crumbled as evidence exposed similar operations across the country. Each new revelation brought more families forward, more children found, more wounds beginning to heal. Wilson had moved his practice to a new children's hospital built with Lancaster Foundation funding. His work with traumatized children earned international recognition, though he cared more about the smiles returning to young faces than any accolades. Elizabeth found herself changing too. The Ice Queen of Wall Street had melted, transformed by love and purpose. She still ran her company with precision, but now her boardroom overlooked a daycare center where Emma and other children played safely while their parents worked. "You've created something remarkable," Hayes told her during a Sunday dinner that had become a weekly tradition. Not just taking down Cooper's network, but building this family from the pieces they tried to destroy. Rebecca, who had finally taken a well-deserved vacation, sent photos from her travels helping other countries identify and dismantle similar trafficking operations. "Every child deserves what Emma and Emily have found," she wrote. "A family that chooses them, protects them, loves them unconditionally." The healing wasn't always easy. They all carried scars: Sarah's hypervigilance, Elizabeth's grief for Grace, Wilson's memories of Thomas, Margaret's decades of secret sacrifice. But together they formed a safety net of understanding and support. Family, Emily declared one evening, showing them her latest drawing of their entire group, is like a big puzzle. Even if some pieces are different shapes, they fit together to make something beautiful. Elizabeth hung the drawing in her office, a daily reminder that love could flourish in the most unexpected places, that family meant more than blood, and that healing was possible even after the deepest wounds. 1 year later, Elizabeth's penthouse garden bloomed with roses for a very special occasion. Emily, wearing a flower girl dress she'd helped design, scattered petals down an aisle created between blooming plants, while Emma toddled behind her, carrying a tiny basket of her own. Sarah, radiant in blue, watched her daughters with tears of joy as Wilson waited at the makeshift altar, his eyes fixed on Elizabeth as she walked toward him. Margaret held Emma, while Hayes and Rebecca sat with other guests who had become family through their shared journey. "Family isn't just about who we're born to," Elizabeth said in her vows, "but who we choose to love, to protect, to stand beside through darkness and light. You helped me find the strength to love again, to build something beautiful from broken pieces." Wilson's response brought tears to every eye. "Through you, I found the family Thomas always wanted us all to have. Through these children, I found the purpose he taught me to seek. And through this love, we all found healing." The Lancaster Foundation had grown beyond their wildest dreams. Sarah's leadership transformed it into a beacon of hope, working with law enforcement worldwide to reunite families torn apart by trafficking. Emily's artwork decorated the foundation's walls, drawings of families finding each other, of love conquering fear. Cooper's network had crumbled completely, its victims now finding support and healing through programs Elizabeth and Sarah had created. The Mountain facility had been transformed into a rehabilitation center, where Wilson led a team helping traumatized children recover through therapy and love. Margaret, finally free from her decades-long undercover mission, devoted herself to being the grandmother she'd never had the chance to be. Her stories of the Lancaster family's legacy of courage inspired a new generation to fight for justice. Hayes had been promoted to lead a new task force dedicated to preventing child trafficking, while Rebecca's research methods became a model for organizations worldwide. Both remained constant visitors to the penthouse, part of the extended family that had grown from shared purpose and love. On this wedding day, as they gathered for photos in the garden, Emily tugged at Elizabeth's dress. "Are you my mama now too?" she asked. "For real." Elizabeth knelt beside her, embracing both Emily and Emma. "Sweetheart, I've been your mama since the night I found you. Love makes us family, and love is the strongest thing there is. Sarah joined them, followed by Wilson, Margaret, and all the others who had become part of their extraordinary family. Together they had proved that love could overcome the darkest evil, that family could be built from broken dreams, and that healing was possible when hearts opened to hope. As the sun set over their celebration, Emily's latest drawing sat, framed on a garden table, a family portrait showing all of them together, with the words "Love Wins" written in rainbow colors across the top. In the end, that was the truest victory of all. Dear viewers, thank you for joining us for the redemption of broken hearts. Your support means the world to our team. If this story touched your heart or resonated with you, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on family, redemption, and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories that explore the human experience. Every subscription helps us continue creating meaningful content. Please share this video with friends and family who might find hope in this tale of triumph over darkness. If you enjoyed this story, hitting the like button helps others discover it too. Together we can spread messages of hope, healing, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Thank you for being part of our storytelling journey.